The tale of Rome starts not with facts, but with myths and legends interwoven with bits of historical reality, according to Roman lore. Twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, were born to a Vestal virgin named Rhea Silvia and the god Mars. Apprehensive of these divine offspring, a jealous king commanded their drowning in the Tiber River. However, fate saw them carried gently downstream, where they landed on the future site of Rome. There, a she-wolf stumbled upon these forsaken infants, nourishing them with her milk until a shepherd named Julius found them and raised them as his own. As the brothers matured into strong young men, they discovered their royal lineage and resolved to build a new settlement on the very banks that had saved them. Yet a conflict arose that would leave a lasting mark on Roman history. Romulus killed Remus, becoming the sole founder of the new city, standing atop what would eventually be known as Palatine Hill. Romulus used a plow to define the city's boundaries in what we now consider 753 BCE, a date from which Romans would later trace their history. This early settlement was little more than a cluster of thatched huts by the Tiber, surrounded by robust Etruscan cities to the north and Greek colonies to the south. To bolster his nascent community, Romulus extended asylum to outlaws, refugees, and exiles from neighboring territories. However, this migration resulted in a significant dilemma: a scarcity of women. Romulus resolved this through the infamous incident known as the theft of the Sabine women. He invited the nearby Sabines to a festival and then abducted their daughters to serve as brides for the Roman men. For nearly 2.5 centuries following Romulus, Rome was governed by kings, a total of 7 monarchs who guided the city's early progression from a village into a formidable regional power. After Romulus, Numa Pompilius reigned as a wise and pious leader, instituting many religious customs and establishing the position of Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest. He also built the Temple of Janus, which was only closed during times of peace, an uncommon occurrence in Roman history. The third king, Tullus Hostilius, expanded Roman territory through conflicts with neighboring Alba Longa. Under his leadership, Rome absorbed the Alban populace after their defeat, setting a trend of assimilation that would serve Rome throughout its history. The legendary battle between the Horatia and Curiati triplets, symbolizing Rome and Alba Longa, respectively, originated during this time, a decisive conflict that determined the fate of both cities without full-scale war. The fourth king, Ancus Marcius, constructed Rome's first bridge over the Tiber and founded the port city of Ostia at the river's mouth, which opened trade routes that would eventually link Rome with the Mediterranean. Additionally, he expanded the city's borders to include the Janiculum Hill, enhancing defenses for the growing settlement. The fifth king, Tarquin the Priscus, introduced significant Etruscan influences into Roman culture. He initiated the building of the Grand Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill and the Circus Maximus for chariot races. The major drainage project, the Cloaca Maxima, began during his reign, transforming the swampy valley between the hills into what would later evolve into the Roman Forum. Servius Tullius, the sixth king, established Rome's first constitution, categorizing citizens by wealth and military capability. This system, known as the Centuriate Assembly, would remain a cornerstone of Roman societal structure for centuries. Servius also constructed the first defensive wall, encompassing the famed 7 hills of Rome: Palatine, Aventine, Capitoline, Quirinal, Viminal, Esquiline, and Celian. The last king, Tarquin the Proud, ruled despotically and oversaw impressive architectural projects such as the completion of the Temple of Jupiter. His tyranny, however, estranged the Roman elite, culminating in a tipping point when his son, Sextus Tarquin, assaulted Lucretia, a noble Roman woman. This outrage sparked a rebellion led by Lucius Junius, Brutus, and Lucretia's husband, Collatinus. Leading to the monarchy's overthrow in 509 BCE, Tarquin and his family fled, paving the way for the emergence of the Roman Republic. This new system of governance was intended to prevent the concentration of power that had resulted in tyranny under Tarquin. It established 2 annually elected officials known as consuls, each capable of vetoing the other's orders, ensuring that no single entity could dominate Roman governance. Behind these consuls was the Senate, council of elders representing noble families, whose council carried significant influence even if they lacked formal legislative authority. The early republic faced immediate dangers to its survival. as the exiled king sought alliances among surrounding cities. Meanwhile, the powerful Etruscan lord Lars Porsena besieged Rome. According to legend, a Roman hero named Horatius Cocles single-handedly defended a bridge against the Etruscan forces, while his comrades destroyed it behind him, averting the city's capture. Rome's internal affairs proved as challenging as its external threats. The Republic was initially dominated by patricians, hereditary nobles controlling both political and religious institutions, while the majority, known as plebeians, found themselves excluded from power and often ensnared in debt bondage to patrician landowners. This ongoing tension between the classes would significantly influence Roman politics for centuries to come. The first major social upheaval arose when plebeian soldiers, the backbone of Rome's military, withdrew from the city to the Sacred Mount, marking history's first documented general strike.
Wow.
This drastic measure compelled the patricians to create the office of tribune of the plebs. Officials who had the power to veto harmful legislation, tribunes were sacrosanct. Harming them carried severe religious consequences. The next critical advancement was the establishment of the 12 Tables, Rome's first written law code publicly displayed in the Forum. These laws introduced transparency, too. What had been secretive legal practices managed by patricians, though still favoring the elite. The 12 Tables represented a pivotal move towards greater legal equality by declaring that laws must be publicly accessible. As Rome overcame internal strife, it expanded its influence throughout central Italy, engaging in numerous conflicts against neighboring tribes, including the Volsci, Aequians, and significantly the Etruscans. The conquest of the affluent Etruscan city of Veii, just 12 miles to the north, doubled Roman territory. This expansion encountered a grave setback when Celtic Gauls defeated the Roman army at the Allia River, leaving the city vulnerable to sacking. Much of Rome was devastated, though defenders held out on the Capitoline Hill. According to legend, sacred geese in the Temple of Juno alerted Romans to a nighttime assault, saving the citadel. The Gauls eventually withdrew after receiving a ransom of gold. But the trauma of this disaster lingered in Roman memory for generations. Remarkably, Rome rapidly recovered from this calamity, with the city being rebuilt and fortified. Within decades, Rome triumphed over the Latin League, integrating these sister communities into its evolving state. Some Latin groups received full citizenship, while others enjoyed partial rights, establishing a framework for graduated citizenship that became integral to Roman governance. The middle years of the Republic witnessed significant political reforms. The Lycian ensection laws mandated that at least one consul be a plebeian, thus allowing non-patricians to access the highest office. Over the ensuing years, plebeians gained entry to all principal magistrates and religious positions, with wealth rather than lineage dictating political opportunity. This integration process helped Rome avoid the destructive class conflicts that plagued numerous Greek city-states. Rome's burgeoning power inevitably led to conflicts with other regional powers. Through a series of arduous confrontations against the mountain tribes of central Italy, known as the Samnites, Rome consolidated its control from coast to coast across the Italian peninsula. As Rome established its dominance in central and southern Italy, it engaged with the sophisticated Greek colonies of Magna Graecia. The strongest among them, Tarentum, felt threatened by Roman expansion and sought assistance from Pyrrhus, king of Epirus in Greece. Pyrrhus arrived in Italy with an imposing army, complete with war elephants previously unknown to Romans. Although he achieved victories against Roman forces, he suffered heavy casualties that diminished his troops. Following an unsuccessful campaign in Sicily, Pyrrhus returned to Greece, leaving the Greek cities to confront Rome alone. Tarentum soon succumbed, giving Rome control over the entire Italian peninsula south of the Po River. Rome's administration of this new Italian confederacy displayed remarkable prudence. While firmly controlling foreign relations and military endeavors, Rome allowed allies some local autonomy. The extension of various citizenship levels and legal rights created strong incentives for loyalty. Roman colonies strategically placed throughout the peninsula served dual purposes, rewarding veterans with land and establishing military outposts. This Italian alliance system equipped Rome with manpower and resources that ultimately outmatched any Mediterranean rival, strengthening its position in future conflicts. A united Italy represented a geopolitical transformation in the ancient world, a large state with centralized authority, yet flexible enough to embrace local diversity. Soon, Rome's attention shifted beyond Italy to Sicily, where the powerful maritime empire Carthage controlled the island's western portion. When a group of Italian mercenaries known as the Mamertines sought Roman protection against Syracusans and Carthaginians, Rome faced a momentous choice. Intervention meant war with a naval power of long-standing experience. The Senate's decision to aid the Mamertines triggered the onset of the First Punic War. This conflict compelled Rome to develop naval capabilities from the ground up. After several early setbacks, Romans captured a Carthaginian ship and used it as a model to construct their fleet. They equipped vessels with a corvus, a boarding bridge that enabled Roman soldiers to leverage their superior infantry skills in naval skirmishes. Despite suffering devastating losses to storms and battles, Roman tenacity ultimately triumphed. Leading Carthage to cede Sicily to Rome along with a substantial indemnity. The Second Punic War placed Rome on the verge of destruction, unlike any prior conflict since the sack of Gallia. The formidable Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca led his forces, including war elephants, from Spain into Italy. He inflicted 3 catastrophic defeats on Roman legions at the Trebia River, Lake Trasimene, and most devastatingly at Cannae, resulting in perhaps 50,000 Roman casualties in a single engagement. Despite these setbacks, Rome remained resolute. While Hannibal marched through Italy garnering allies, Rome raised new armies. General Quintus Fabius Maximus adopted delaying tactics to avoid direct confrontation, while a young commander named Scipio took the conflict to Spain and subsequently North Africa. Confronted with the imminent threat to Carthage, Hannibal was recalled from Italy. At the Battle of Zama Scipio, now called Africanus, defeated Hannibal, culminating the war. Carthage relinquished its navy, overseas territories, and political sovereignty, becoming a tributary to Rome. This victory established Rome as the paramount power in the Western Mediterranean. Roman interests turned eastward to the Hellenistic kingdoms emerging from the remnants of Alexander the Great's empire. Roman legions vanquished King Philip V of Macedonia and overcame the Seleucid king Antiochus III at Thermopylae in Magnesia, leading to the division of Macedonia into 4 republics under Roman oversight. Greece came under direct Roman governance as the Third Punic War ended with Carthage's total destruction. These conquests profoundly altered Roman society, flooding enormous wealth into Italy from newly acquired provinces and enriching both the state treasury and individual citizens. Captured slaves became plentiful, transforming the nature of Italian agriculture, where small farms gave way to expansive estates reliant on slave labor. Many displaced rural citizens migrated to Rome, creating social stresses in the overpopulated capital. The Republican political system, crafted for a small city-state, struggled to manage a sprawling Mediterranean empire. Governors sent to oversee provinces often abused their powers, seeking personal gain. Successful generals commanded unwavering loyalty from their troops, posing potential threats to legitimate authority. The traditional Roman values of simplicity, duty, and self-sacrifice, referred to as mos mearum, or the way of the ancestors, appeared to wane as luxury and ambition surged. These transformations set the stage for the tumultuous final century of the Republic. Tiberius Gracchus was elected as tribune and proposed redistributing public land to alleviate rural poverty. His proposals generated fierce resistance from wealthy senators, leading to his assassination, marking Rome's first political murder in centuries. A decade later, his brother Gaius Gracchus faced a similar fate after advocating for broader reforms, including grain subsidies for urban citizens. These events shattered the traditional consensus among the ruling elite and established political violence as a tool in Roman governance. In the following decades, ambitious military leaders such as Marius and Sulla manipulated their forces to intervene in political disputes. Sulla's march on Rome represented a historic moment, the first instance of a Roman general deploying his army against the city itself. After defeating his rivals in a brutal civil war, Sulla appointed himself dictator, executing systematic purges of his enemies through a series of proscription lists. which publicly named individuals to be killed and had their property confiscated. Although Sulla eventually stepped down, his actions set a cautionary precedent that reverberated through Roman politics. Three powerful figures, Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar, formed an unofficial coalition called the First Triumvirate to dominate the political landscape of Rome. Caesar secured military command in Gaul, where his remarkable campaigns conquered modern France and briefly invaded Britain. His military successes earned him vast wealth, experience, and public favor. However, as the alliance shattered, the Senate aligned itself with Pompey against Caesar. Ordered to relinquish his command, Caesar instead crossed the Rubicon River with his army, igniting a civil war with his famous declaration, "The die is cast." After conquering Pompey's forces, Caesar ascended as the dictator of Rome, initiating various reforms, including a new calendar. His mounting honors and lifetime rule alarmed Republicans who perceived him as a monarch in the making. On the Ides of March, conspirators led by Brutus and Cassius assassinated Caesar in the Senate House. Instead of restoring the Republic, Caesar's assassination ignited a fresh civil war. His adopted heir, Octavian, allied with Mark Antony and Lepidus to pursue Caesar's murderers. After overcoming Brutus and Cassius at Philippi, the triumvirate divided the Roman territories among themselves. However, tensions arose, especially between Octavian in the west and Antony in the east, who was allied with Cleopatra. The climactic battle occurred at Actium, where Octavian's forces, commanded by Agrippa, triumphed over Antony and Cleopatra's fleet. The lovers fled back to Egypt, where they eventually took their own lives. Now the sole ruler of Rome, Octavian wisely avoided Caesar's mistakes while amassing unprecedented power. He carefully maintained a facade of republicanism, referring to himself as princeps instead of king or dictator. The Senate bestowed upon him the title of Augustus, signaling the effective end of the Republic and the dawn of the Roman Empire. The Republic's legacy was intricate. Its constitutional framework ultimately failed to prevent dictatorship and civil strife. Nonetheless, over 5 centuries, Rome evolved from a small city-state into a dominant Mediterranean power. Republican ideals persisted in name under the emperors, influencing Western political thought for centuries. In January of 27 BCE, as Octavian addressed the Senate, Rome stood at a critical juncture. The Republic, which had ruled for 500 years, lay shattered after severe civil conflict. Instead of claiming clear monarchy, Octavian performed a delicate political maneuver, proclaiming a return of power to the Senate and the people of Rome, seemingly renouncing his extraordinary authority. In response, the Senate, full of his loyalists, granted him the name Augustus, a title with sacred connotations implying veneration. They also provided him with a carefully crafted set of powers: command over key provinces, housing legions, tribunician authority, granting him veto capabilities, and other privileges. This marked the inception of what historians label the Principate, a governance structure where Augustus ruled as first citizen, upholding the illusion of republican government while wielding unmatched power. Augustus ruled for 41 years, establishing governing patterns that shaped Roman imperial rule for ages. He scaled down the army from 60 legions to 28, resettling veterans across Italy and its provinces, and made crucial tax reforms, instituted a postal system, and established fire brigades and a permanent police force in Rome. His monumental construction projects transformed the capital, famously claiming to have found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. In foreign affairs, Augustus secured Roman borders. He pushed Germanic tribes beyond the Rhine and used diplomacy to secure the empire's eastern frontier with the Parthian Empire. After centuries of resistance, he completed the conquest of Spain, establishing the Danube as Rome's northern boundary. Most importantly, Augustus created a dependable succession system, a significant hurdle the Republic struggled with in its final years. Lacking a biological son, he gradually raised his stepson Tiberius into prominence, ensuring a smooth transition after his death. Tiberius, a competent general but reluctant ruler, initiated the Julio-Claudian dynasty, which governed Rome for over 5 decades. His reign began promisingly, but grew increasingly dark as he withdrew to Capri, leaving administration to the ambitious prefect Sejanus. Once Sejanus' conspiracies came to light, Tiberius instigated a wave of treason trials, inducing fear within the Roman aristocracy. Tiberius was succeeded by his grandnephew Caligula, whose early potential deteriorated into apparent insanity. Accounts of his extravagance, cruelty, and erratic behavior, including plans to appoint his horse as consul, may be exaggerated. Yet his swift assassination after just 4 years reflects his unpopularity. Following Caligula's death, the Praetorian Guard elevated Claudius to power. Despite being physically marginalized, Claudius proved to be an effective ruler during his 13-year reign, expanding the empire by conquering Britain and integrating new provinces in the east. He widened citizenship and admitted Gauls into the Senate. Recognizing the necessity of provincial integration over Italian domination, Nero, the last of the Julio-Claudian emperors, initially appeared promising under the philosopher Seneca's guidance, yet soon his reign became tyrannical. He was responsible for his mother Agrippina's murder, kicked his pregnant wife to death, and persecuted Christians following the Great Fire of Rome. Rising unpopularity culminated in revolts leading to Nero's suicide. Famously lamenting, "What an artist dies in me," Nero's death ushered in a chaotic period known as the Year of 4 Emperors, where generals Galba, Otho, and Vitellius each claimed the throne, rapidly displaced by military insurrections. Finally, Vespasian, commanding the Eastern legions, emerged victorious, establishing the Flavian dynasty. During his decade-long reign, Vespasian restored stability after Nero's excesses and initiated construction of the Flavian amphitheater, better known today as the Colosseum. His eldest son, Titus, succeeded him shortly before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius decimated the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. Titus addressed this crisis compassionately, gaining widespread mourning upon his death just 2 years later. The last of the Flavian emperors, Domitian, ruled for 15 years. Overseeing significant military engagements along the Danube frontier and in Britain, his autocratic tendencies strained relations with the Senate and ultimately led to his assassination, ending the Flavian dynasty. The Senate then selected Nerva, an older member with no heir and minimal military support, as emperor, adopted the popular general Trajan as his heir, establishing a successful pattern of adoptive succession that lasted nearly a century. Trajan, hailing from Spain, became the first known Italian emperor. His 19-year reign marked the empire's territorial pinnacle, annexing Dacia for its gold mines and briefly expanding into Armenia, Mesopotamia, and parts of Parthia. Despite some of Trajan's conquests being abandoned later, these expansions were the empire's high point. Trajan was also lauded for his domestic policies, initiating extensive construction, including a large forum in Rome and well-being programs for poor children. His exemplary reign set the standard against which later emperors were judged. On his deathbed, he may have adopted Hadrian, though suspicions about the legitimacy of this adoption existed. Hadrian ascended and quickly redirected imperial policy, acknowledging the empire's geographic limits. He retreated from Trajan's eastern conquests, focusing on consolidating existing territories. Throughout his 21-year reign, Hadrian traveled extensively, even on foot with troops. Meticulously inspecting frontiers, he ordered the construction of a massive wall in northern Britain to defend against tribal threats, a structure still partially intact. Hadrian, an admirer of Greek culture, embraced a Hellenic aesthetic, which distinguished him from prior emperors. His architectural legacy in Rome included the Pantheon, featuring a groundbreaking concrete dome symbolizing Roman engineering prowess. Hadrian's successor, Antoninus Pius, ruled peacefully for 23 years, without major conflicts, allowing the empire to flourish. Continuing the tradition of adoption, Antoninus chose Marcus Aurelius as his heir, requiring him to adopt Lucius Verus as emperor. As a committed Stoic philosopher, Marcus Aurelius's reign was characterized by military challenges. He initially ruled alongside Lucius, but after Lucius's death, Marcus faced mounting issues alone. The empire was additionally plagued by the Antonine Plague, which potentially killed 5 million people, impairing military and economic strength. Despite these adversities, Marcus successfully maintained frontiers and even planned for new provinces beyond the Danube before his passing. Unlike previous emperors who adopted qualified heirs, Marcus chose his biological son Commodus as his successor, a decision with dire consequences. Reflecting on the era from Augustus to Marcus Aurelius, this period epitomized Rome at its zenith. With about 70 million people living under the Pax Romana, a time of relative peace and security, this vast network of roads, exceeding 250,000 miles, facilitated trade, communication, and military travel across the Mediterranean and beyond. Cities flourished with public amenities like aqueducts, baths, and theaters. Additionally, Roman law became increasingly sophisticated, got administered across 3 continents, while literature and the arts thrived. This era also saw the emergence and gradual spread of Christianity. Jesus of Nazareth lived and died during Tiberius' reign, and the new faith spread slowly, even amid sporadic persecution. By Marcus Aurelius' time, Christian communities had established themselves in major cities. As provincial importance grew, Italy lost its exclusive privilege under emperors from Spain and elsewhere. Citizenship gradually expanded until it eventually included all free inhabitants. Broad trade networks connected distant regions, with goods flowing from remote lands into Roman markets. This remarkable period of stability and prosperity relied on several foundations. The Augustan settlement balancing imperial authority with traditional respect, an effective, adoptive succession system, secure frontiers, and an economy capable of sustaining urban civilization and a 400,000-man standing army. As Marcus Aurelius approached his end on the Danube frontier, the end of this golden age seemed imminent. Commodus's accession signaled the onset of challenges that would test the empire's resilience in unprecedented ways. Despite this, the achievements of the early empire would resonate for centuries, presenting an ideal of peace, prosperity, and governance inspiring future civilizations long after Rome fell. The golden age of the Roman Empire began to fade as Commodus ascended after Marcus Aurelius' death. Unlike his philosophical father, Commodus showed little regard for governance. He preferred the gladiatorial arena over the Senate. Staging combats, he charged immense amounts to the imperial treasury, boasting of countless victories over opponents unwilling to defeat him. While Commodus indulged in fantasies, renaming Rome Colonia Commodana, and claiming to be the reincarnation of Hercules, the empire's administration continued functioning through seasoned officials. Yet his unpredictable executions of senators instilled a pervasive fear. On the final day of the year, he was strangled in the bath by his wrestling partner Narcissus, part of a conspiracy involving his inner circle. After Commodus' assassination, the Senate elevated the experienced General Pertinax to emperor. His attempts to restore order among the Praetorian Guard were fatal, as they murdered him just 3 months later for refusing their demand for bonuses. What followed is regarded as one of the most disgraceful episodes in Roman history. As the Praetorians auctioned the empire to the highest bidder, Didius Julianus, a wealthy senator, won this dubious prize, though his reign lasted only 66 days. Provincial armies, incensed by the turmoil in Rome, supported their commanders as imperial candidates. Out of this disorder emerged Septimius Severus, commander of the Danubian legions. He marched into Rome, disbanded the disgraceful Praetorians, and established a new dynasty. Severus, hailing from North Africa, brought significant changes to governance, notably an increasing reliance on military figures in administrative roles over senators. His 18-year rule included successful campaigns against the Parthian Empire, establishing a new province in Mesopotamia. He strengthened Hadrian's Wall in Britain and campaigned against the Caledonians in Scotland, eventually dying in York while advising his sons to enrich the soldiers and disregard everyone else. Those sons, Caracalla and Geta, were initially intended to rule jointly, but mutual hatred made cooperation impossible. Within a year, Caracalla had his brother murdered in their mother's presence, erasing Geta from official records. He then began a reign of terror against Geta's supporters, while simultaneously issuing the Constitutio Antoniana, granting Roman citizenship to all free males in the empire, a significant decree that emphasized Rome's evolution into a universal empire, where citizenship was legally defined rather than ethnically. Caracalla was assassinated during a campaign in the east, killed by a soldier while relieving himself. The Severan dynasty continued with various rulers, notably Julia Dumna, sister-in-law of Septimius Severus, who played a pivotal role in promoting her grandsons, Elagabalus and Alexander Severus. Elagabalus scandalized Rome with his devotion to an Eastern sun god, trying to elevate this worship above traditional Roman practices. His rumored effeminacy and alleged marriage to a male charioteer alienated many traditional Romans. After his assassination by the Praetorian Guard, Alexander Severus, merely 13, assumed the throne under his mother Julia Mamaea's regency. His 13-year reign sought to mend relations with the Senate and uphold traditional values, yet mounting military pressures persisted. A new Persian dynasty, the Sassanids, emerged, posing threats in the east. While increasing Germanic pressures strained the Rhine and Danube frontiers, when Alexander attempted to negotiate with Germanic tribes instead of engaging them militarily, his troops mutinied, declaring Maximinus Thrax. A giant from Thrace as emperor, his shift represented a new breed of ruler, a soldier of humble beginnings, devoid of education or refinement, rising solely through military merit. Although an effective general, Maximinus faced deep unpopularity due to harsh taxation needed to fund military campaigns. The Senate, eager to restore their influence, backed a revolt led by the elderly governor Gordian and his son in Africa. Their swift defeat led to the appointment of two senators, Pupinus and Balbinus, as co-emperors. Maximinus marched on Italy but was murdered by his own troops during a siege. The Senate's appointees soon met the same fate at the hands of the Praetorian Guard, which then elevated the young Gordian III as emperor. This whirlwind of emperors inaugurated what historians labeled the crisis of the 3rd century. Over the following decades, at least 26 men claimed the imperial title. Most ruling only a few years before violent ends. The Roman Empire seemed to fragment as the imperial office became a turbulent prize sought through military means. External threats compounded the chaos. Emperor Decius and his son fell fighting Goths at Abritus, becoming the first Roman emperor to perish in battle. Emperor Valerian met a grimmer fate. Captured alive by the Persian king Shapur II and allegedly used as a human footstool before being skinned after death. With central authority crumbling, the Western Empire began fragmenting. Breakaway territories included a Gallic empire and Britain under local rulers, while the eastern desert city of Palmyra, led by Queen Zenobia, seized control over provinces stretching from Egypt to Asia Minor. A significant economic crisis accompanied this political disarray as currency debasements led to severe inflation. The collapse of Rome's thousand-year saga seemed inevitable. Yet resilient structures and capable individuals emerged, steering the empire back from the brink. The turning point for the Roman Empire occurred with Claudius II Gothicus's brief 2-year reign. He faced and decisively defeated Gothic invaders in the Balkans, earning the title Gothicus. Though he perished from the plague, his efforts were carried on by Aurelian, acclaimed by his troops after Claudius's passing. Aurelian's 5-year reign earned him the title Restorer of the World. He vanquished the Palmyrene Empire, capturing Queen Zenobia and bringing her to Rome in chains for his victory. Aurelian also reclaimed the breakaway Gyk provinces, reuniting the empire to defend Rome from barbarian raids. To bolster defenses, he constructed a massive wall circuit that remains partially intact today. Moreover, Aurelian reformed the currency and established an official sun cult to promote religious unity. However, Aurelian's assassination, prompted by a secretary's false claim about his intentions to execute several officers, jeopardized his accomplishments. This led to several short-lived emperors until Carus briefly established a dynasty while successfully campaigning against Persia. Carus's death was attributed to a lightning strike, though assassination was plausible. His son Numerian was murdered by his Praetorian prefect Aper while returning from the Persian front. At Numerian's funeral, the gathered officers proclaimed Diocletian, a cavalry commander of humble Dalmatian origin, as emperor. Diocletian executed Aper, fulfilling a prophecy that he would ascend the throne after slaying the boar. Aper in Latin. With Diocletian's rise to power, the crisis period ended, but the empire was significantly transformed. The previous balance of republican forms and imperial power, established by Augustus, was replaced by a more overtly autocratic system. The emperor became increasingly viewed as a sacred figure instead of first among equals. Military demands dominated governance, causing the army to nearly double in size to address various frontier threats. This expansion consumed a larger share of state resources, leading to heavier taxation. The distinction between Italy and the provinces largely vanished as the entire empire faced similar burdens. Despite the turmoil of the 3rd century crisis, important cultural developments thrived. Neoplatonism emerged through philosophers like Plotinus, whose mystical perspectives influenced Christian thought. Christianity, previously persecuted, grew significantly during these tumultuous years. Providing spiritual solace and community amid uncertainty, Roman law evolved, with jurists like Ulpian and Pinion refining concepts that shaped future civilizations. Remarkably, despite economic challenges, Roman engineering produced outstanding works, including Aurelian's walls and public buildings across provinces. By the century's end, the empire Diocletian inherited was damaged, but not defeated. Upcoming reforms would entirely reshape Rome's government, creating a new imperial system capable of confronting a changing world. The transition from Augustus's early empire to the late Roman world was complete, forged during a time of crisis and recovery. As Diocletian claimed victory, the Roman world lay exhausted after 50 years of turmoil. Learning from this chaos, the new emperor would redefine imperial governance more significantly than anyone since Augustus. Born into a modest family in Dalmatia on the Adriatic coast, Diocletian ascended through military service, lacking noble connections. This outsider's perspective allowed him to perceive Rome's systemic issues more clearly. The empire had expanded too vast for effective governance by a single ruler. Military emergencies at one frontier often required the emperor's presence, distracting him during crises elsewhere. Recognizing this, Diocletian took the daring step of appointing a cumberer, elevating fellow officer Maximian to Augustus to manage the western provinces, while Diocletian directed attention eastward. This arrangement alone proved insufficient, prompting Diocletian to expand the imperial college by appointing 2 junior emperors, known as Caesars, Galerius in the east and Constantius Chlorus in the west. This tetrarchic system divided administrative duties while maintaining the illusion of a unified empire. Each tetrarch governed a quarter of Roman territory from their respective capitals, diminishing Rome's central role. Diocletian's plan included orderly succession. After 2 decades, the senior Augusti would retire, allowing the Caesars to ascend and appoint new junior colleagues. This mechanism aimed to avert the succession crises plaguing the 3rd century. Beyond reshaping imperial leadership, Diocletian reorganized the empire's administrative geography by subdividing provinces, increasing their number while enhancing manageability. These provinces, grouped into 12 dioceses, were organized into 4 prefectures, corresponding to each tetrarch's dominion. This structure created multiple oversight layers designed to minimize corruption and boost efficiency. The military faced a similar restructuring. Diocletian delineated civil and military authority, which had traditionally been united in provincial governors. He significantly enlarged the army to address various frontier threats while curbing potentially rebellious generals' power by reducing provincial military strength. Additionally, he established a centralized mobile reserve, prepared to react to crises. These expanded military and administrative frameworks required increased resources, leading Diocletian to implement a comprehensive census to identify taxable assets and individuals. His new tax system necessitated payment in kind, replacing the increasingly worthless currency, and mandating specific quotas of goods collected from regions. To ensure essential services continued, Diocletian enforced hereditary occupations for crucial roles, binding sons to follow their father's trades. While these reforms helped stabilize the empire, they came with heightened state control over individual lives. The free market economy of the early empire transitioned to a more regulated system, prioritizing the state's needs above private actions. The divide between honest and humility became more pronounced, with different legal standards applied to each. Diocletian also sought to address economic instability through an edict on maximum prices, which aimed to set price ceilings for numerous goods and services across the empire. However, this well-intentioned measure proved unfeasible to enforce and was eventually discarded. In religious matters, Diocletian initially exhibited tolerance, but later instigated what became known as the Great Persecution against Christians. This most intense suppression involved destroying churches, confiscating scriptures, and executing clergy. Despite the severity of the persecution, it varied regionally and failed to halt Christianity's spread. True to his succession plan, Diocletian took the unprecedented step of voluntarily retiring and compelled his co-Augustus Maximian to do so as well. He spent his remaining years cultivating cabbages at his palace in Split, often claiming that only an emperor could appreciate retirement's joys. However, the carefully crafted tetrarchic system collapsed shortly after Diocletian's retirement. Succession plans crumbled under dynastic sentiment. Troops proclaimed Constantine, son of Constantius Chlorus, and Maxentius, son of Maximian, as emperors. The subsequent years were marked by complex power struggles among various claimants vying for supremacy. Ultimately, Constantine emerged victorious. According to Christian tradition, for the pivotal Battle of Milvian Bridge against Maxentius, Constantine visioned a cross in the sky, accompanied by the words, "In this sign, conquer." Whether motivated by genuine spirituality or political calculations, Constantine's acceptance of Christianity changed the Roman world significantly. He jointly issued the Edict of Milan with his eastern counterpart, Licinius, formally ending the persecution of Christians and restoring their seized properties without establishing Christianity as the state religion. This edict granted Christianity legal status and imperial favor. Later, Constantine triumphed over Licinius to become the sole ruler of a reunited empire. One of Constantine's most pivotal decisions was the establishment of a new capital at the site of the Greek city Byzantium, named Constantinople. This strategic city controlled the strait between Europe and Asia and served as the imperial capital for over a millennium, free from Rome's pagan associations. While maintaining many of Diocletian's reforms, Constantine altered some harsher aspects, introducing a new gold currency called the solidus, which remained stable for centuries. After decades of inflation, this created monetary stability. His religious policies favored Christians without persecuting traditional worship, fostering a gradual transition that intensified under his successors. Following Constantine's death, his empire passed to three surviving sons, Constantine II, Constantius II, and Constans. Their reigns were marked by internal conflicts and rising religious tensions, particularly over the Arian controversy pertaining to Christ's divine nature. Ultimately, Constantius II emerged as the sole emperor, ruling until his death. The brief reign of Julian the Apostate, Constantine's nephew, marked the last serious effort to restore traditional Roman religion. Raised a Christian, yet covertly converting to paganism, Julian sought to revive classical culture while reducing Christian privileges. His 80-month reign ended when he died fighting the Persians, contributing to the collapse of this religious counter-revolution. The emperors following Julian maintained Christianity's favored status. Under Theodosius I, Christianity became the official state religion through the Edict of Thessalonica, which pronounced Nicene Christianity as the empire's sole legitimate faith. Subsequent edicts closed pagan temples and prohibited traditional sacrifices, abandoning millennial religious customs that had supported Rome since its inception. Theodosius faced significant external challenges beyond religious issues. His predecessor Valens suffered a catastrophic defeat at Adrianople against Gothic forces. With perhaps two-thirds of the Eastern Field Army destroyed and Valens killed, this battle highlighted the escalating military threat from Germanic peoples targeting land within the empire. Rather than expelling the Goths, Theodosius settled them within imperial territory as federated troops, acknowledging Roman sovereignty while allowing them to operate under their leaders. This pragmatic approach provided urgently needed manpower, increasing the influence of semi-autonomous Germanic factions within Roman borders. The late Roman military increasingly relied on such allied groups, heavily recruiting among Germanic peoples for regular forces. The stereotype of effete Romans hiring barbarians oversimplifies reality. Many Romans still served, while many barbarians became thoroughly Romanized. Nonetheless, the army's ethnic composition shifted significantly compared to earlier centuries, reflecting profound social and economic developments during this transformative period. Christianity reshaped cultural values, emphasizing otherworldly salvation over classical civic virtues. The urban middle class waned as imperial service and large agricultural estates dominated the economy. Cities shrank behind defensive walls, with classical monuments repurposed for building materials or repurposed for Christian use. Amid these changes, remarkable cultural achievements continued. This era witnessed the flourishing of patristic literature, as Christian thinkers like Ambrose, Jerome, and Augustine developed theological and philosophical frameworks influencing Western thought for centuries. In law, the Theodosian Code compiled imperial legislation, creating systematic legal references that preserved Roman jurisprudence for future generations. Upon Theodosius's death, the empire divided between his sons Arcadius in the east and Honorius in the west. Though theoretically temporary, this division ultimately became permanent. The eastern and western courts maintained the appearance of a unified empire, yet they increasingly pursued separate interests and confronted different challenges. The eastern half, wealthier and better protected, would endure for another millennium as the Byzantine Empire, although its citizens continued to identify as Romans. In contrast, the western half faced existential challenges, leading to its rapid collapse within a single lifetime. As the 4th century closed, the Roman state bore little resemblance to Augustus's principate. The emperor now ruled as an Oriental-style monarch, referred to as dominus rather than prince. Officials bowed before the imperial presence, which became more secluded amid elaborate court ceremonies. Christianity displaced traditional religions, altering society and fundamental assumptions about human existence. Nevertheless, some essential continuities in Roman governance persisted. The empire still controlled approximately the same territories as during the Antonine period. Latin and Greek remained administrative languages, with Roman law regulating daily life. Citizens still identified as Romans, even as the meaning of that identity evolved with changing circumstances. The stage was now set for the final act of the Western Empire's drama. As Germanic pressure on the frontiers mounted and internal resources dwindled, the Western emperors confronted insurmountable challenges. The coming century would see the end of direct Roman rule in the West, even while the eastern half adapted and survived. As the 5th century dawned, the Roman world stood divided between Theodosius's sons, Arcadius in Constantinople and Honorius in Milan, ruling a theoretically singular empire. Both young emperors heavily relied on influential advisors, Rufinus in the east and Stilicho in the west. This created court intrigues that undermined imperial authority while Rome faced its greatest external threats. The arrival of the Huns from the Eurasian steppes catalyzed the coming crisis, pushing Germanic peoples against and ultimately across Roman borders in unprecedented numbers. The Goths emerged as the most immediate threat. After their leader Fritigern's death, they united under an ambitious new king, Alaric. Many Goths, having settled in the empire as federates, felt mistreated by imperial authorities. When their demands for better terms were ignored, they revolted and advanced through the Balkans while negotiating and threatening the eastern and western courts. Stilicho, possessing partial Vandal ancestry, yet thoroughly Roman in culture, managed the Gothic threat through military action and diplomacy. His efforts were undermined by mutual suspicion from both imperial courts, fearing he aimed to dominate the entire empire. After Stilicho's execution on treason charges, the Western Empire lost its most capable defender. With Stilicho gone, Alaric saw an opening and invaded Italy, accomplishing what had not occurred in 8 centuries. The sack of Rome. Though the Goths remained in the city only 3 days and the damage was relatively contained, the psychological impact on the Roman world was profound. Jerome, writing in Bethlehem, mourned that the bright light of the world had extinguished, and that the entire world had perished in that single city. Alaric's death shortly after the sack led the Goths to migrate into Gaul and eventually settle in Aquitaine as Roman federates. Meanwhile, other Germanic tribes crossed the frozen Rhine during a harsh winter, entering Gaul and later Spain. These included Vandals, Suevi, and Alans, who established territories within nominally Roman provinces. The Western imperial government, now based in Ravenna, for improved security, struggled to respond to these multiple incursions. Real power shifted increasingly to the master of soldiers, the supreme military commander rather than the emperor. For nearly 2 decades, that role was held by Flavius, sometimes called the last of the Romans. As Flavius worked to uphold Roman authority in Gaul, a new threat loomed in North Africa. The Vandals, led by King Gaiseric, crossed from Spain into Africa, conquering the prosperous provinces that had long supplied Rome with grain. By seizing Carthage, they established a formidable kingdom and created a fleet dominant in the western Mediterranean. Concurrently, the Western Empire faced its most formidable adversary, Attila the Hun. After ravaging the eastern provinces and defeating imperial armies, Attila steered his attention westward. Idius, cobbling together a coalition of Roman forces and Germanic federates, including Visigoths, confronted the Hun army at the Battle of the Catalonian Plains. This desperate defense succeeded in halting Attila's advance in Gaul. The following year, Attila invaded Italy, with Rome seemingly on the brink of doom. Yet an embassy led by Pope Leo I persuaded Attila to withdraw. While later accounts attributed this to divine intervention, practical factors likely included disease in his forces, food shortages in ravaged Italy, and possible bribes from Constantinople. Shortly after Attila's death and the consequential collapse of Hunnic power, Rome briefly gained respite. That same year, however, court intrigue led to Oedipus's murder, orchestrated by Emperor Valentinian III, who himself was assassinated months later, ending the Theodosian dynasty in the West. What followed was a rapid succession of short-lived emperors, many mere puppets of powerful military leaders. Majorian, who ruled for just a few years, represented the last earnest attempt to restore Roman power in the West. His efforts to rebuild the military and reclaim North Africa from the Vandals ultimately led to his defeat and execution. Within a decade, the provinces of Syria, Palestine, and Egypt, once part of the Roman Empire for over 6 centuries, came under Islamic control. This catastrophic territorial loss drastically altered the empire. The remaining area became more compact, focusing on Constantinople, Western Asia Minor, and the southern Balkans. Greek replaced Latin as the administrative language, while the empire adopted a distinctly Christian character. Modern historians often view this shift in the 7th century as the transition from the Eastern Roman Empire to the Byzantine Empire, although contemporaries did not recognize such a division. Despite these significant losses, the empire adapted and continued to thrive. The theme system reorganized provinces into military districts, where soldier farmers defended their lands, effectively responding to constant Arab raids. Greek fire, a mysterious incendiary weapon capable of burning on water, provided imperial fleets with a vital advantage during sieges. When Arab forces besieged Constantinople on 2 separate occasions, the empire's formidable defenses prevailed. The failure of these sieges marked a pivotal moment, preserving the empire as a Christian stronghold in the eastern Mediterranean and protecting much of Europe from Islamic conquest. The 8th and early 9th centuries were marked by controversies related to religious imagery, now known as the iconoclastic period. Emperors, from Leo III to Theophilus, banned the veneration of icons, viewing them as dangerously close to idol worship. This policy created divisions within society and strained relationships with Rome and other Western Christians who continued to embrace sacred images. The restoration of icons helped to mend these divides and ushered in a time of cultural and intellectual revival under the Macedonian dynasty founded by Basil I during this period. Agricultural output increased, urban centers revived, and military successes followed. Emperors like Phocas and John Zimisces recaptured territories in Syria, while Basil II earned the moniker Bulgar Slayer for his aggressive campaigns that unified the Balkans under imperial control. This revitalized Rome, despite its Greek language and culture, represented the most powerful, wealthy, and sophisticated society within the Christian world. Constantinople, with its population of about 500,000, dwarfed the modest towns of Western Europe. Its markets offered goods from distant regions, such as China and Scandinavia, while its churches dazzled with mosaics. However, beneath this golden facade, structural weaknesses began to emerge. The free peasantry, which had formed the backbone of the theme armies, gradually lost land to expanding aristocratic estates. Civil service positions increasingly became hereditary rather than merit-based. and growing religious differences with the Latin West culminated in the schism that divided Christianity into Catholic and Orthodox branches. The major disaster occurred at Manzikert, where the Seljuk Turks defeated Emperor Romanos IV and opened Anatolia, the empire's heartland, to Turkish settlement. Simultaneously, Normans seized the last imperial holdings in Italy, while Pechenegs raided across the Danube. Once seemingly triumphant, the empire now fought for its survival. Emperor Alexios I's calmness's desperate appeal for Western aid helped trigger the First Crusade. While Crusaders established states in the Holy Land, tensions grew between Latins and Greeks. The Fourth Crusade infamously diverted to Constantinople, resulting in the sacking of the greatest Christian city and the establishment of a short-lived Latin empire. Though imperial forces later recaptured Constantinople under Michael VII Palaiologos, the restored empire was but a shell of its former self. Italian merchant republics dominated its economy, while Serbian and Bulgarian states claimed Balkan territories. Most importantly, Turkish Emirates controlled most of Anatolia, with the aggressive Ottoman state emerging as a significant menace. The Ottoman Turks gradually encircled Constantinople. Despite desperate diplomatic efforts for Western aid, support proved minimal. Emperor Constantine XI faced the massive Ottoman army of Sultan Mehmed II with only a few thousand defenders when the final siege commenced in April. For 7 weeks, the ancient walls of the city withstood the Ottoman cannon fire. On May 29th, during the last attack, Constantine XI purportedly cast off his imperial regalia, dying alongside his soldiers as the city fell. Mehmed rode to Hagia Sophia, converting it into a mosque that same day. Thus the Roman Empire, which had persisted for 1,480 years since Augustus's reign, finally ended. Yet, its legacy continued in numerous forms. The Ottoman sultans styled themselves as Caesars of Rome, governing much of the former Byzantine territory. Moscow claimed the mantle of the Third Rome, preserving Orthodox Christianity and imperial traditions. The Renaissance in Italy rekindled classical texts preserved by Byzantine scholars who fled westward before and after Constantinople's fall. Most critically, the Byzantine Empire acted as a vital bridge between ancient and medieval worlds, safeguarding Roman law, Greek philosophy, and early Christian theology during times when these might have been lost. Its intricate diplomacy, sophisticated bureaucracy, and complex economy supplied models beyond its borders. The epic saga beginning with Romulus on the Palatine Hill has reached its conclusion, but Rome did not truly fall. It transformed. As you begin to drift off to sleep, consider the profound echoes of Roman civilization in our laws, languages, architecture, and numerous other aspects of life that would be unrecognizable without Rome's enduring legacy. The last emperor with the title of Caesar may have fallen in 1453, yet Rome's influence resonates through the centuries into our modern world. As you settle into sleep, let's reflect on the remarkable legacy of this civilization that has profoundly shaped our world. Rome's most crucial contribution may be found in the realms of law and governance. The Romans cultivated a sophisticated legal system that addressed the complex needs of a diverse society. Concepts like the presumption of innocence, the significance of intent in criminal acts, and the differentiation between civil and criminal law all reflect Roman roots. Justinian's monumental legal compilation, the Corpus Juris Civilis, preserved these principles through medieval times into modernity. When European nations developed their legal systems during the late medieval and early modern periods, they borrowed heavily from this Roman heritage. Today, the civil law tradition governing much of continental Europe, Latin America, and parts of Africa and Asia is derived directly from Roman models. Even England's common law tradition, while evolving separately, absorbed significant Roman concepts. Rome also pioneered public administration practices that influenced later states, creating a professional civil service, systematic record-keeping, standardized weights and measures, regular censuses, and sophisticated tax systems. Though these innovations may seem mundane, they served as the essential framework for complex societies. The very notion of citizenship, a formal legal status encompassing rights and responsibilities, owes much to Roman practice. Rome's gradual extension of citizenship to conquered peoples offered a path to integration, sustaining the empire for centuries. This model of earned inclusion, though imperfectly realized, stood as an alternative to strict ethnic exclusivity prevailing in many ancient states. In the realms of language and literature, Rome's impact is undeniable. Latin, once the speech of rustic farmers by the Tiber, became the lingua franca of Western civilization for over a millennium. Although no longer spoken as a first language, its descendants, the Romance languages, including Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, and Romanian, native tongues for nearly 1 billion people today. Even languages not directly descended from Latin exhibit its influence through centuries of borrowing. English, though Germanic in structure, derives approximately 60% of its vocabulary from Latin. Roman literature established forms and themes that continue to resonate through Western literary traditions. Virgil's epic Aeneid served as a benchmark for subsequent poets from Dante to Milton. Ovid's inventive mythological narratives found in Metamorphoses influenced Shakespeare and many others. Cicero's rhetoric became models for political oratory, while Seneca's philosophical works and tragedies shaped Renaissance drama. The letters of Pliny and the histories of Tacitus still inform our understanding of literary genres. The physical legacy of Rome is equally impressive. Roman engineering transformed the Mediterranean landscape with an unparalleled infrastructure network. Many Roman roads still serve as the foundation for modern highways, their meticulously planned routes remaining optimal even with today's technology. Aqueducts built by Roman engineers continued to supply water to cities like Segovia in Spain well into the 20th century. Roman architectural innovations, particularly the refinement of the arch, vault, and dome, enabled the construction of large and lasting buildings previously inconceivable. The Pantheon in Rome, featuring a perfect dome with an oculus open to the sky, stands as one of the world's architectural wonders, inspiring structures from the Renaissance to the present. In military affairs, Rome's influence is equally profound. The legion, a flexible professional fighting force combining heavy infantry with specialized units, set a model emulated by armed forces for centuries. The Roman focus on discipline, training, engineering, and logistics overshadowed mere courage or sheer numbers, establishing standards for future successful armies. Contemporary military strategists still study Caesar's campaigns as exemplary models of strategic and tactical brilliance. Rome's political legacy presents a more complex picture. The Republic, with its checks and balances, separation of powers, and term limits, influenced the framers of many modern constitutions, particularly America's founders. However, Rome also illustrated how republican institutions could be undermined by ambitious individuals. Illustrating the precarious balance between liberty and security, the imperial system that replaced the republic provided both favorable and unfavorable lessons for future generations. At its best, the Roman Empire offered governance, security, and prosperity to diverse populations across 3 continents. At its worst, it showcased the dangers of autocracy, the corruption of absolute power, and the challenges of unifying vast territories with varying cultures. Christianity, the world's largest religion, owes much of its spread to the Roman context in which it developed. Early Christians used Roman roads, ships, and urban networks to share their message. After Constantine's conversion, the imperial administrative structure provided a template for ecclesiastical organization, with dioceses often aligning with Roman provincial boundaries. The title Pontifex Maximus, once held by Roman emperors as chief priests of the state religion, transitioned to the popes guiding the Catholic Church. Rome's cultural achievements lay not only in original contributions, but also in its ability to synthesize and transmit knowledge. Roman artists, philosophers, and scientists often adapted Greek models, preserving and passing on Greek achievements to later civilizations. Without Rome as an intermediary, much of classical Greek thought might have been lost to the Western tradition. The very idea of Rome itself emerged as a powerful symbol long after the empire's fall. During the medieval and early modern periods, political leaders sought to lay claim to the Roman legacy. Charlemagne's coronation as Roman emperor in 800, the Byzantine ruler's identity as a Roman, Russian Tsar's self-identification as heirs of the Third Rome, and the Habsburg Holy Roman Empire all reflected the potent symbolic heritage of Rome. Even Nazi architecture and Mussolini's fascist imagery deliberately evoked Roman imperial grandeur, showcasing the persistent, though sometimes misappropriated, power of Roman symbolism. At its core, Rome gifted later civilizations a cosmopolitan vision. The notion that diverse peoples could partake in a shared cultural and political community while preserving aspects of their identities. Though imperfect in practice, this Roman ideal of unity under law and common citizenship, rather than division by ethnicity or religion, remains a powerful aspiration in our increasingly interconnected global society. Rome also exemplified both the heights of human achievement and the depths of human failings. The same civilization that produced the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius also showcased the excesses of Caligula. The society that constructed the Pantheon also hosted brutal gladiatorial games. This intricate legacy reminds us that human accomplishments are always accompanied by imperfections. Civilization itself is both inspiring and flawed. As you drift deeper into sleep, consider how different our world would be without Rome's lasting influence. Our legal systems, languages, architecture, engineering, political institutions, and religious organizations would all be profoundly altered without the Roman experience. From the mundane details like the naming of our months to significant questions regarding citizenship and governance, Rome has molded how we understand ourselves and our society. The Roman saga, which spans over to millennia from Romulus to Constantinople's fall, presents a grand epic of human achievement, resilience, and adaptation. Through rises and falls, triumphs and disasters, the Roman world evolved while still connecting to its past. Even after the empire ceased to exist as a political entity, its shadow continued to impact everything that followed. As you gently drift off to sleep, find comfort in this continuity of human experience. The same stars that illuminated Augustus as he transformed Rome from brick to marble now shine upon us. The same human hopes, fears, and dreams that motivated Romans in pursuit of security, prosperity, meaning, and beauty continue to motivate us today. In this shared humanity, the greatest legacy of Rome may reside,